thank you very much for that. Now, where does that bring us? I think that's back on to Mark Anderson, who's going to bring us up to date with the latest from the World Health Organization, another organization seeking control.
What's important, gentlemen and listeners in UK column land, is that the May 10 deadline was reached. Governments agree in this WHO press release I'm reading from, governments agree to continue their steady progress on proposed pandemic agreement ahead of the World Health Assembly. And it's dated May 10th, and that was the last official day of the intergovernmental negotiating body that was created a couple years ago or so to negotiate this treaty. And the treaty is now being called a treaty most of the time by the World Health Organization. I need that previous slide up still with the headline, if I may. Anyway, just a little bit of this. Governments of the world today agreed to continue working on a proposed pandemic agreement. They use the word agreement and treaty interchangeably, and to further refine the draft ahead of the 77th World Health Assembly that starts May 27 and ends June 2nd, almost in line with Bilderberg, which is May 30 through June 2nd. Governments meeting at the WHO headquarters in Geneva agreed to resume hybrid and in-person discussion over the coming weeks to advance work on critical issues, including around a proposed new global system for pathogen access and benefit sharing, that is, life-saving vaccines, quote unquote, treatments and diagnostic, pandemic prevention, and of course, the One Health philosophy, which looks at humans and animals and plant life on the same level and same value judgments, and the financial coordination that's needed. So what it means, though, is the INB stopped their official negotiating on May 10th as promised, and now they're really just going to resume at the World Health Assembly itself, as is being indicated, at least by all indications. Now, there's a couple of quick quotes in this brief report. This is from a May 3rd press conference that I covered. This is Precious Metsoso, as she's known, a WHO apparatchik. She said this: the adoption of a treaty is not the end of a process. It is a beginning. Once the World Health Assembly adopts this pandemic agreement, then it kickstarts other processes, firstly at a country level. And there's one other quote from her. There must be ratification, she says, by parliaments, and we have to get a threshold of countries that ratifies the treaty so that it can come into force. So she's basically saying that parliaments, which would include Congress on our side of the pond, will have a stab at this. The noted WHO watchdog James Roguski, jamesroguski.substack.com, he has some doubts about the veracity of that. He thinks they're being a little disingenuous and just telling people what they want to hear, and that they'll take a largely executive approach to this and not let the elected people in parliaments and Congress have much, if any, say. I guess that remains to be seen. The U.S. Senate rules on treaties does provide for the constitutionally required advice and consent by the Senate, where 2/3, a supermajority of the 100 senators, have to vote yes or no on a given thing like this treaty. However, in the Senate rules, it does provide for an alternative that would be largely, if not totally, an executive decision where the president would make the call and the Senate would be cut out of the equation. So the involvement of our elected reps, guys, kind of remains to be seen. The other thing is that there's a statement in Article 35 of the draft treaty that I find very ambiguous and hard to understand. But at the press conference I covered May 3rd, where these photos came from that I took, they said that 60 nations would have to adopt the treaty for it to come into force. The only thing that I'm not clear on is, would it be 60 and then it would go to the parliaments? Or would 60 countries through their parliaments have to vote on this to make it come into force? Which way would it be? So I'm trying to unravel that. And next week, I hope to have that completely ironed out as to exactly how this would come into force if it does. And there's still some language being used. I'll end with this, where they're still kind of suggesting that they're not quite as far along on this thing as they'd like people to believe. So it's possible they'll